The dangerous man. Why solitude is the ultimate act of power. You know what genuinely terrifies the crowd more than anything else? It's not the aggressive guy throwing punches at the bar. It's not the loudmouth running his opinions like a broken faucet. It's not even the so-called alpha male flexing in the gym mirror, desperate for a glance. No, it's the man who sits alone and simply doesn't give a damn. It's the man who walks away from their games, their frantic drama, their desperate need for validation. And he does it with a genuine, quiet smile. Not because he is broken, not because he is scared, but because he has figured out something they haven't. He's realized that most of what society sells you, the endless networking, the transactional friendships, the performative social media posts, it's all cheap theater. And he stopped buying tickets years ago. This is the man they label dangerous. This is the man they can't control. And throughout history, this individual has made entire empires profoundly nervous. Let me tell you exactly why. The conditioning of the herd. Here is the thing society won't tell you straight. If they did, their entire psychological game would collapse. You are being trained. From the moment you could walk, you've been conditioned to believe that being alone is inherently wrong. That if you are not constantly surrounded by people, constantly chatting, constantly connected, constantly performing, then something is fundamentally broken inside you. Your parents asked, "Why don't you have more friends?" Your teachers grouped you up for projects because apparently you can't learn unless you're suffering through someone else's lack of work ethic. Your co-workers judge you for eating lunch alone in your car. Society screams at you, "Join us, blend in, be like everyone else." And if you don't, they have the toxic labels ready. Unsocial, weird, loner, creep. But here's what they are really saying. You scare us. Because the man who deeply loves being alone doesn't need their approval. He doesn't need their validation. He doesn't play their emotional games. And that, in their eyes, makes him unpredictable, uncontrollable, and dangerous. Schopenhauer, The Inner Wealth. Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher who famously saw life as a cycle of suffering and striving, understood something crucial about the power of solitude. He stated, "The more someone is able to enjoy being alone, the more intelligent they are." Before you dismiss this as intellectual arrogance, hear out the nuance. Schopenhauer wasn't saying lonely people are smarter. He was observing that people who don't require constant external stimulation, who can sit with themselves without compulsively reaching for their phone every 5 seconds, those people possess something genuinely rare: inner wealth. Think about it. Most people are terrified of silence. They blast music, they scroll endlessly through digital feeds, they call someone, anyone, just to fill the void. Why? Because when the noise stops, they are forced to face themselves. And for the majority of the population, that is the single scariest thing in the world. But the man who loves being alone, he has already made peace with that void. He is not running from himself. He is not distracting himself with cheap dopamine hits and meaningless surface conversations. He is comfortable in his own head. And that, my friend, is power. Schopenhauer's warning went further. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Read that line again. If you cannot be alone, you cannot be free. Because every single time you need someone else to feel okay, you have handed them a measure of power over you. Every time you require external validation, you have made yourself a puppet. And society absolutely loves puppets. They're predictable, controllable, and they do exactly what they're told. But the man who loves being alone, he cut his own strings a long time ago. Nietzsche, The Path of the Overman. Then we bring in Nietzsche, the man who set philosophy on fire. If Schopenhauer told you life is suffering, Nietzsche was the one who looked at that suffering and said, "Good, now what are you going to do about it?" Nietzsche had zero tolerance for society's games. He saw the herd mentality, the way people follow each other off cliffs because everyone else is doing it, the way they adopt beliefs, not because they've thought about them, but because it's easier to simply fit in. He called this the slave morality. Think about how many people live their entire lives doing what they are supposed to do. They get a student loan for a degree they don't want because that's what you do. They get a job they secretly hate because that's what you do. They chase the house with the white picket fence and the manufactured stability because that's what you do. And they never once stop, not for a single quiet moment, to ask, is this what I actually want? Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, the overman or Superman. This was not a comic book hero. This was the individual who actively creates their own values, who doesn't wait for society to tell them what's right or wrong, who courageously walks their own path, alone if necessary. He warned, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And that is the key word, struggle. Choosing to be alone, choosing to walk away from the crowd, choosing to think for yourself. It is not an easy choice. The tribe will fight you. They'll mock you. They'll call you dangerous. Because you are. You are dangerous to their control. You are dangerous to their illusions. You are dangerous to their comfort. And that is exactly why you scare them. Dark psychology, the mechanics of control. Let's get into the deep psychology, the stuff they don't teach you in school because it would make you too aware of how you are constantly being manipulated. Humans are fundamentally tribal creatures. We evolved in groups. For millennia, being cast out from the tribe meant death, starvation, or being eaten by a bigger threat. So, we developed this deep, primal fear of being alone. Here is the dark part. Society still uses that primal fear to control you. They can make you do almost anything to belong. You'll buy the right clothes, you'll laugh at the right jokes, you'll share the right opinions, you'll perform constantly, desperately, just to maintain your place in the tribe. Because being alone is the threat. It is the ultimate punishment. But what happens when someone doesn't fear that punishment anymore? What happens when a man looks at the tribe and says, "I'm good, I don't need this"? He becomes immune to their primary control mechanism. And that is profoundly terrifying to the system. There's a concept in marketing and dark psychology called social proof. The idea that people will do things simply because they perceive that others are doing them. Advertisers use it. Politicians use it. Your friends use it whether they know it or not. Everyone's going to this party. Everyone thinks this way. You don't want to be the only one who... It is all manipulation driven by the fear of social isolation. But the man who loves being alone? Social proof simply doesn't work on him. You can't threaten him with loneliness because he has already chosen it and he is thriving there. You cannot manipulate someone who doesn't need you, and when people can't manipulate you, they get scared. Then they get angry. Then they try to tear you down. The dangerous loner, historical proof. History is littered with dangerous loners. The people who changed everything, the ones who toppled empires, sparked revolutions, created masterpieces, they were often alone. Not because nobody liked them, but because they saw truths others couldn't see. When you see the truth while everyone else is living a comfortable lie, you are forced into solitude. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert alone. Buddha sat under a tree alone. Newton formulated the laws of physics during a plague, isolated from everyone. Tesla worked in near solitude, inventing the systems that power the modern world. The pattern is clear. But here is the critical point. Society hated most of these people while they were alive. They were mocked, imprisoned, called heretics and madmen. Why? Because they didn't fit. They didn't play the game. They were alone, and they were powerful because of it. Even in darker chapters, the lone wolf was the one who scared authorities the most. Not the organized rebellions. Those could be infiltrated, predicted, and controlled. It was the individual, the one who didn't need a group, who couldn't be bought or threatened because he had already stepped outside the system. He was the ghost in the machine, the variable they couldn't account for. That is the dangerous man. The modern war on thought. Let me tell you something you've probably noticed but never put into words. The modern world is engineered to ensure you are never alone with your thoughts. Smartphones that ping you every 30 seconds. Social media that's literally engineered to be addictive, feeding you endless junk food for the mind. Netflix autoplaying the next episode before you can even think about what you want. Open office plans where you can't have a moment of privacy. Cities so loud you can't hear yourself think. It is not an accident. A population that is constantly distracted, constantly stimulated, constantly looking outside themselves. That is a population that doesn't ask dangerous questions. Questions like, why am I doing this soul-crushing job? Who decided this is how life should be? What do I actually want from my one life? If people started asking those questions, really asking them, the whole system would crumble. Jobs people hate would lose their workers. Governments built on lies would lose their power. The entire illusion would collapse. So they keep you busy. They keep you constantly connected. They keep you desperately afraid of silence, because in the silence you might realize you don't need most of what they're selling. You might realize you are enough on your own. And that realization, that is the most dangerous thing in the world to their control. The 3 stages of becoming ungovernable. What happens when you choose solitude? When you truly embrace solitude, when you stop running and start spending time alone, things change in 3 distinct, powerful stages. This is how you become ungovernable. 1. You get clarity, the stripping away. All that noise in your head, all those voices telling you what you should do, what you should be, what you should want, they start to fade. The external programming melts away, and what's left is your own voice. Maybe for the first time in years, you hear what you actually think, what you actually believe. That clarity is surgical power. 2. You get selective, the raised standard. You realize how much of your limited time and precious energy was wasted on people who didn't matter, conversations that went nowhere, and obligations that served everyone but you. When you are deeply comfortable alone, you stop tolerating because you are no longer afraid of being alone if you walk away from the junk. Your standards shoot up, your circle gets smaller, your peace gets deeper. 3. You get dangerous, the unpredictable force. You become dangerous, not violent or cruel, but dangerous to the system, because you are not playing their game anymore. You're not chasing their approval. You're not performing for their validation. You've broken the contract. You've become ungovernable. When enough people become ungovernable, when enough people choose themselves over the system, everything changes. That is why they fear the man who loves being alone. He is the beginning of the end of their control. The shadow. Solitude as a forge. But let's be real for a second. I'm not here to sell you a fairy tale. There is a shadow side to solitude that nobody wants to admit. Yes, being alone can be powerful. It can be freeing. It can be the thing that saves you. But it can also destroy you if you are not disciplined. Solitude itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. It is a space. And what happens in that space depends entirely on what you bring to it and what you do with it. Solitude is like fire. In the right, disciplined hands, it forges steel. It creates light. It transforms raw, painful material into something indestructible. But in the wrong, undisciplined hands, it burns everything to the ground. The dangerous man who loves being alone understands this. He knows that sitting alone can either build you up or tear you down. The silence can bring clarity, or it can drive you into madness. There is a reason why hermits have been both revered as wise and feared as insane. Because time spent alone amplifies whatever is already inside you. If you sit there feeding negative thoughts, replaying old wounds, convincing yourself the world is against you, solitude will turn that into an inferno that consumes you. But if you are using that time to think clearly, to read, to create, to question, to grow, solitude becomes the forge where you are remade into something the world has never seen. Nietzsche himself descended into madness toward the end of his life. Schopenhauer died bitter and alone, consumed by his own pessimism. They understood solitude's power, but even they weren't immune to its shadow side. They lost control of the forge. The antidote to destructive isolation is discipline. It is using that silence not for self-pity, but for creation. It is the ruthless, intentional choice to build inner strength. The final attack: guilt, shame, and fear. Once you start choosing solitude, once you start walking your own path, they will come for you. Not with armies or laws, but with something far more subtle, more insidious: emotional warfare. The attack of guilt. You're being selfish, you've changed, you think you're better than everyone else. They'll make you doubt yourself. They'll make you feel like something's profoundly wrong with you for wanting to be alone, for not participating in their circus of drama. The attack of shame. If guilt doesn't work, they'll try shame. They'll call you unsocial, weird, broken. They will attempt to relabel your self-possession as a social disease. The attack of fear. And if shame doesn't work, they'll try primal fear. You'll die alone. You'll regret this when you're older. Nobody will be there for you when you need them. They paint solitude as this tragic, miserable existence. The narrative must be that you need them, that you can't be happy alone, that choosing solitude is giving up on life. They need you to believe that being alone is the punishment. But here is what they don't want you to know. Some of the happiest, most fulfilled people in history have been the ones who learned to be enough for themselves. The ones who didn't need a crowd to feel valuable. The ones who were dangerous enough to be alone. The secret. Being alone is the reward. So what is the point of all this philosophy, psychology, and history? It's simple. You don't have to play their game. You don't have to be constantly available, constantly connected, constantly performing for an audience that doesn't actually care about you. You are allowed to step back, to be alone, to think for yourself. And if that scares people, if that makes you dangerous in their eyes, good. Because the most dangerous thing you can be in a world that desperately wants to control you is free. And freedom starts with the ability to be alone without being lonely, to walk away from the noise and find peace in the silence, to create your own values instead of adopting theirs. Schopenhauer said that a person who can't enjoy their own company is probably not very good company for others either. Nietzsche said that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. And history has shown us again and again that the people who change the world are the ones who are comfortable walking alone. Not because they hate people, but because they found something rare. They found themselves. Once you find yourself, once you really know who you are when nobody's watching, you become ungovernable. You become free. You become dangerous. And the world will never be the same because of it. Here it is. The big secret. The thing they've been hiding from you your entire life. Being alone isn't the punishment. Being surrounded by people who drain you, who don't understand you, who need you to be small so they can feel big. That is the punishment. Being alone is the reward. It's the prize you get for having the courage to walk away from what doesn't serve you, for choosing peace over popularity, for choosing yourself over their approval. And once you realize that, you are free. You are dangerous. You are ungovernable. And no matter how hard they try to pull you back into the crowd, you'll never be theirs again. Keep being dangerous, my friends.